Why Americans ignore the world's best-selling motorcycle. Americans are financing $20,000 motorcycles for 7 years. Then they ride them twice a month, maybe. Meanwhile, 3 billion people on 3 continents chose a different path. They bought a $2,000 motorcycle that lasts 20 years, runs on terrible roads, and gets fixed with basic tools. This bike dominates Africa. It owns South Asia. It is taking over Latin America, and many Americans have never heard of it. I spent months digging through global motorcycle data, and what I found will make you question everything the industry has been selling you. Because while Harley was marketing chrome and heritage, while Honda was chasing horsepower numbers, one country quietly built a motorcycle empire by asking a simple question: what do people actually need? I am ranking the 4 biggest motorcycle producing countries by real-world success, not showroom success, not magazine cover success, real-world survival in the harshest conditions on Earth. Number 4 will surprise no one. Number 1 will blow your mind. Let's start with the complete failure. China sits at number 4 on this list, and here is why. In the early 21st century, Chinese manufacturers tried to dominate the global motorcycle market the same way they dominated everything else. They flooded it with cheap products and crushed the competition on price. Africa alone had well over 100 different Chinese motorcycle brands at one point. The prices were unbeatable. $800, $1,000, sometimes $1,500 for a complete motorcycle. But there was a problem. Actually, 3 problems. Problem number 1, material quality was garbage. The metal was soft, frames cracked, bolts stripped, chains snapped after a few thousand miles. In Rwanda, riders call cheap Chinese motorcycles one-year bikes because, after a year, most are done. This is not because China cannot build quality. They build half the world's electronics. They manufacture components for BMW and Mercedes. But in motorcycles, they race to the bottom of price and forget that a motorcycle is not a disposable toy. It is a livelihood. Problem number 2, zero parts network. When your Chinese bike breaks down, and it will, you cannot find parts. The factory that made it does not exist anymore. Or it does exist, but now it is making blenders. You are stuck with a $1,000 pile of scrap metal collecting dust. Problem number 3, no service support, no training for local mechanics, no technical manuals, no warranty support. You buy the bike, it breaks, you are completely on your own. I talked to riders across Africa. Here is what they told me about Chinese bikes. I bought 3 Chinese bikes, all failed within a year. I switched to Indian bikes, 5 years, and 0 problems. That is from Abdul and Legos. The result? Those brands that flooded Africa are mostly gone, crushed by companies that actually cared about quality and long-term customer relationships. And before you think this has nothing to do with America, wait, because the same forces reshaping Africa are already creeping into the US. China tried to win on price alone, and they lost catastrophically, because here is what they missed. When your motorcycle is your taxi, your delivery vehicle, your only way to feed your family, you cannot afford to replace it every year. The cheapest bike is not the one with the lowest sticker price. It is the one that is still running 5 years later. Chinese manufacturers learned this lesson the hard way. Some are adapting now. Brands like CF Moto are improving their quality and building real service networks. But the damage is done. The market moved on. That is why China sits at number 4. They had the manufacturing capacity. They had the price advantage. But they forgot the most important thing. Motorcycles have to work. So if cheap does not work, surely expensive Italian engineering dominates, right? Wrong. Italy sits at number 3. And here is why they are completely irrelevant to most of the world. Italian motorcycles are gorgeous. Absolutely stunning machines. Ducati, Aurelia, MV, Osta, they are works of art. Every curve is perfect. Every component is precision engineered. They sound like angels screaming. But here's the problem. They are designed for people who have $25,000 to spend on a hobby. That is a tiny fraction of the global population. The average Ducati costs $18,000. In most of the world, that is multiple years of salary. You are not buying transportation. you are buying garage art. You are buying a conversation piece for your climate-controlled man cave. And even if you can afford the sticker price, the real costs are just beginning. Ducatis require valve adjustments every 7,500 meters. Not by you in your driveway, by trained technicians with special tools and proprietary diagnostic equipment. Great if you live near a dealer. Useless if the nearest authorized service center is 500 miles away. The result is Italian brands have essentially zero market share in Africa, South Asia, and most of Latin America. They are completely absent from the markets where billions of people actually need motorcycles. Incredible machines for weekend rides in California, completely impractical everywhere else. Music. Look, I am not hating on Italian bikes. If you have got the money and you want a Panigale V4, buy it. It is an engineering masterpiece. But understand what you are buying. You are buying performance art. You are buying emotion. You are not buying practical transportation. And that is fine for a small segment of wealthy riders in developed countries. But when we are talking about global motorcycle dominance, when we are talking about which bikes actually matter to the most people, Italy does not even register. They are making bikes for the 1%. The other 99% need something different. Now we get to Japan, and this is where it gets interesting, because I need to be crystal clear about something before we continue. I have massive respect for Japanese motorcycles. Honda, Yamaha, Suzuki, and Kawasaki built the modern motorcycle industry. Their engineering is world-class. Their reliability is legendary. When people think of quality motorcycles, they think Japanese. Honda is the world's #1 motorcycle manufacturer. Nearly 19 million units sold in 2024. They have held that spot for 50 consecutive years. Yamaha is number 3 globally. Suzuki is number 7. Japanese brands build reliable, well-engineered, long-lasting motorcycles. Nobody disputes that Japan should dominate everywhere, right? They have the engineering, they have the reputation, they have the manufacturing scale. Not quite. Japan is losing ground in 3 massive markets. And the reason why tells us everything about what actually matters when 3 billion people need transportation. This is not a failure of engineering, it is a failure of market alignment. Let's start with Africa. Japanese brands have watched their combined market share decline over the past 15 years. Honda, Yamaha, and Suzuki together control somewhere under 30% of the continent. They are not even close to number 1. Why? 3 reasons. Reason number 1, price positioning kills them. A Honda CRF 250L costs $5,500. A Yamaha XTZ 125 costs $3,800. These are their budget models. That is still 2 to 3 times more expensive than what is actually winning in these markets. And before you say that Japanese bikes last longer, so they are worth it, understand this. When you are a taxi driver in Nairobi making $15 a day, the difference between $2,000 and $5,000 is not just money. It is the difference between owning a bike this year or waiting 3 more years while you save. Reason number 2, wrong priorities. Japanese manufacturers market performance, horsepower, top speed 0 to 60 times, advanced technology, electronic rider aids. But if you are running a delivery business in Lagos, you do not care about 0 to 60. You care about one question. Will this bike survive 200,000 kilometers of terrible roads while making me money every single day? Japanese bikes can absolutely do that, but they cost too much for the people who need it the most. Reason number 3, parts costs are brutal. When you need to replace a clutch on a Honda, you are looking at $80 to $120 for the part. Then you factor in shipping if you are not near a dealer. Then you wait. Compare that to the winner in this ranking. Their clutch costs $25 and it is available at 3,000 service centers across Africa. You can get it today. You can install it yourself with basic tools. That is not a small difference. That is the difference between 1 day of downtime and 1 week of lost income. Latin America tells the same story. In Peru, Japanese brands face growing competition from more affordable alternatives. In Colombia, the same thing. In Brazil, Japanese dominance is shrinking year after year. South Asia is even more challenging for Japan. Bangladesh, Nepal, and Sri Lanka, markets where Japanese brands once had stronger positions, are being outcompeted by a neighbor who understood the market better. And here is the thing that really matters. Japanese motorcycles are excellent. They are reliable. They are well built. They last forever if you maintain them properly. But excellent does not matter if people cannot afford it. Honda is not losing because it builds bad motorcycles. Honda is losing because it builds motorcycles people cannot afford early enough in their lives, and whoever wins riders first usually keeps them forever. You can engineer the perfect motorcycle. You can build it to run for 300,000 kilometers. You can make it bulletproof, but if it costs 3 times what people can pay, you lose. That's not a criticism of Japanese engineering. It's a recognition of economic reality. And that's why Japan sits at number 2 on this list, not number 1. They make outstanding motorcycles. But outstanding isn't enough when you're competing against companies that asked a different question. Japanese manufacturers asked, "What is the best bike we can build?" The country number 1 asked, "What does a taxi driver in Legos actually need?" That difference in questions led to a completely different answer, and the answer is dominating 70+ countries, while most Americans have never heard of it. And this is where Harley-Davidson disappears from the conversation entirely. Harley doesn't compete in Africa. It doesn't compete in South Asia. It doesn't compete in Latin America. Not because Harley makes bad bikes, but because Harley makes lifestyle products for wealthy markets. That business model simply does not survive outside rich countries. India didn't kill Harley by beating it. India killed Harley by making it irrelevant to most of the world. So who is number 1? Who beat China on durability, Italy on practicality, and even Japan in the markets that matter most? India, 13.7 million motorcycles produced annually. 22% global market share. Hiromok is number 2 globally behind Honda. Combined exports to 70+ countries, 4.2 million units. And I know what you are thinking. India? Really? Yes. Really. Let me show you the numbers. Africa. Indian manufacturers often control anywhere from 40 to 60% market share depending on the country. In Uganda, Bar often exceeds 80% market share. That is not just success, that is becoming the default choice. The Bajaj Boxer is not just a motorcycle in Africa, it is a motorcycle. If you see a motorcycle taxi in Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Ghana, odds are very high it is a Bajaj or TVS. In Nigeria, Africa's largest economy, Indian brands dominate the top spots. Bajaj consistently ranks among the leading sellers. Nigeria represents one of Bajaj's largest export markets globally. South Asia, Nepal. Bajaj is a market leader. Hero just opened a 75,000 unit assembly plant there. Sri Lanka TVs has a dominant position with strong local manufacturing. Bangladesh. Bajaj is the top Indian brand with significant market share and a full manufacturing plant. Latin America, Colombia. Bajaj ranks number 3 nationally with strong year-over-year growth. Peru. Bajaj is now among the top sellers with rapid expansion. Peru is one of the world's largest importers of Bajaj Pulsar motorcycles. Brazil. Bajaj opened its first factory outside India in 2024. Royal Enfield's Brazilian plant has driven remarkable growth since 2019. Those are not small numbers. Those are not niche markets. That is global dominance in the regions where motorcycles actually matter for daily life. So how did India succeed where others struggled? 3 reasons, and this is where it gets interesting for American riders. First, they understood the actual need. Japanese manufacturers asked, "What is the fastest, most advanced bike we can build?" Indian manufacturers asked, "What does a taxi driver in Lagos actually need?" The answer: costs under $2,000 in local markets, runs on terrible roads, simple enough to fix with basic tools, gets 80+ miles per gallon, lasts 200,000+ km, parts available everywhere. Indian companies built exactly that. Nothing more, nothing less. Second, they built an empire, not just bikes. Bajaj operates over 3,000 service centers across Africa. 30,000. They did not just export motorcycles. They train tens of thousands of local mechanics. They flooded the market with spare parts. They created an entire ecosystem. Honda has dealerships in major cities. Fine. But Bajaj, there is a service center in the next town. Parts are on the shelf right now. The mechanic was trained by Bajaj last year. He has the manual, he has the tools, he can fix your bike today. That is how you win. Third, they actually cared about these markets. Bajaj did not just ship Indian bikes to Africa. They customized them, stiffer suspensions for rough roads, longer seats for passenger comfort, air filters designed for extreme dust, engines calibrated for low-quality fuel. They treated Africa, Latin America, and South Asia as real markets worth serving properly, not dumping grounds for old models, not afterthoughts, real markets. Let me tell you a story that makes this real. I spoke to a motorcycle taxi rider in Kampala, Uganda. His name was James. His Bajaj Boxer had crossed 180,000 kilometers. Original engine, never rebuilt. He told me something I will never forget, that this bike paid for my house, my children's school, everything. That is what we are really talking about here. Not weekend toys, not hobbies or livelihoods. And that is why India succeeded where others could not. The numbers do not lie. Hero MotoCorp alone produces more motorcycles annually than Harley-Davidson, Ducati and BMW combined by volume. TVS exports to over 80 countries. Bajaj's operations in countries like Uganda generate substantial revenue serving real transportation needs. Remember those 160 Chinese brands that tried to dominate Africa? Indian companies outlasted almost all of them through superior products and service. So yes, India's outcome competed with Japan. India competed with China. India competed with Italy. Not in American showrooms, in the real world where 3 billion people actually use motorcycles for daily life. So here is the question. If Indian motorcycles are succeeding in 70+ countries, why do not Americans know about them? Reasons. Reason number 1, brand perception. Americans think expensive equals quality. We assume a $20,000 bike must be better than a $2,000 bike. That is how we are wired. But that is not how 3 billion people in Africa, Asia, and Latin America think. They judge bikes by one metric. Does it work? And by that standard, Indian bikes have proven themselves exceptionally well. Work. Reason number 2, limited marketing. Harley-Davidson spends millions on American marketing. Royal Enfield spent almost zero US marketing budget until recently. You do not see Bajaj commercials during football games. You do not see hero billboards on highways. You do not see TVS sponsoring major racing events. If you do not market to Americans, Americans will not know you exist. Marketing. Reason number 3, limited availability until now. 5 years ago, you could not easily buy most Indian bikes in America, but that is changing fast. Royal Enfield now has 152 dealerships across 48 US states. They are the top-selling brand in the United Kingdom's mid-size segment. They have achieved strong positions in multiple Western markets. The Royal Enfield Himalayan 450, with the same philosophy that succeeded worldwide, is now available in America for $5,799. Simple, reliable, affordable, designed for actual riding, not Instagram. Available. Now, let's be realistic about something. You are not taking a basic commuter bike on an American interstate at 80 miles per hour for hours. That is not what it is built for. But look at how Americans actually ride. 80% of motorcycle trips are under 10. Meaning, commuting to work, local errands, weekend trail rides. For that kind of riding, which is most 17, riding a $5,000 to $6,000 Indian bike absolutely works, actually. And here is something the industry does not want you to think about. They want you financing a weekend toy for 7 years. But if you are actually riding every day, that math does not work. The same conditions that test bikes in rural Africa are the exact same challenges in rural Montana, Texas, Arizona, and Colorado. If a Bajaj can handle the Congo, it can handle your commute math. And for anyone watching who likes to turn their own wrenches, this is where it gets really good. These Indian bikes are not rolling computers. You can actually service them in your driveway with a standard set of tools. No proprietary software, no dealer, only diagnostics. That is freedom. Here is what is happening right now in 2025. Royal Enfield is expanding US dealerships. Bajaj is exploring American market opportunities. Hero is planning a potential North American American entry. TVs is evaluating US distribution. Within 5 years, even single-digit market share for Indian brands would fundamentally disrupt the US budget motorcycle segment because the same forces that worked in Africa, South Asia, and Latin America are starting here. People want bikes that actually work for daily life, not just weekend dreams. Disrupt. I am not saying sell your Honda. If you love your Japanese bike, keep it. They are excellent motorcycles. But if you're a new rider, or you want a commuter, or you're tired of expensive payments on a bike you ride twice a month, don't sleep on Indian motorcycles. 3 continents figured this out already. The rest of the world is catching up. The question is, when will America? India isn't killing Harley and Honda with better branding. It's killing them by solving problems they stopped designing for. So, here's my question for you. Would you actually buy a $5,000 to $6,000 Indian motorcycle? Or does being made in Japan still matter more to you? Be brutally honest in the comments. No music hate, just real talk. If you want me to do a full comparison test, Royal Enfield Himalayan versus Honda, CRF 250L versus Yamaha XT 250. Let me know. I'm seriously considering buying all 3. Subscribe for content that challenges what the industry tells you.